This is for Palestine, Ramallah, West Bank, Gaza. This is for the child that is searching for an answer. This is not just a war over stolen land. Why do you think little boys are throwing stones at tanks? And we'll never really know how many people are dead. They drop bombs on innocent girls while they sleep in their bed. Israel is a terror state, they're terrorists that terrorize. I'll testify my television, televise, I'm telling lies. How many more resolutions have to be violated? How many more children have to be annihilated? This is not a war, it is systematic genocide. But whatever they try, Palestine will never die. Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine!
Hello, I'm Chris Williamson and you're watching Palestine Declassified. We're the only weekly TV show focusing on investigating and exposing the Israeli regime's global war against solidarity with the illegally occupied people of Palestine. The corporate media's coverage of the Zionist regime's daily mass slaughter of men, women and children in Gaza has been shamefully one-sided. The pro-Israel storyline is tightly policed, and any interviewees who stray from that pro-Israel narrative are invariably ridiculed, cut short or continuously interrupted. One of the worst offenders is Piers Morgan, who presents a show on TalkTV. Morgan likes to characterise himself as an even-handed host, but the truth is he's anything but. Latifa Abu Chakra has been looking at who Piers Morgan rubs shoulders with, and her report suggests that he's actually a dissembling phony.
Piers Morgan's coverage of Israel's genocidal war on Gaza on Rupert Murdoch-owned TalkTV has been viewed by many millions of people around the world. He has regularly hosted pro-Palestinian guests and badgered them in a hostile manner. Some have commended him for platforming these guests in the first place, while others have pointed out his clear bias in favour of Israel. However, Morgan has consistently claimed that he is entirely neutral on the issue. Under his cleverly crafted PR of neutrality, we find someone with deep involvement with the individuals who lobby for Israel. This could lead one to believe that the talking points he adopts on Gaza may be directly coordinated with these forces. Piers Morgan has in the past fronted fundraising campaigns for the Norwood charity. It was founded by key Israel lobbyist Lord Jonathan Mendelsohn. The relationship between Mendelsohn, New Labour and Rupert Murdoch is deep. Mendelsohn led the Labour Friends of Israel and provided lobbying services to Rupert Murdoch at the same time. The Norwood charity that Morgan supports is also headed by Israel lobbyist Trevor Shin. Mr. Shin is the president of one of Israel's national institutions, the UJIA. He is also on the executive committee of Israel's largest lobby groups in the UK, BICOM. Shin is also known to have bankrolled the Labour Friends of Israel. During the peak of his coverage on Gaza on October the 22nd, Piers Morgan met for dinner in New York with the wife of Jonathan Mendelsohn. Her name is Nicola Mendelsohn, and she has lobbied relentlessly for Israel within her position at Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp's parent company Meta. She has spoken at Israeli government-supported events in Tel Aviv and met with Shimon Peres while opening Facebook sites in Israel. It was under her watch that Facebook procured the Israeli mobile web analytics company Onavo. Onavo was founded by Guy Rosen and Roy Tiger, both veterans of the Israeli military intelligence unit 8200. Mendelsohn was ecstatic about Facebook's procurement of the company, stating, "Onavo, with all its know-how in data compression, will help Facebook achieve its vision of linking the largest number of users possible in the world, including, of course, Africa and the Middle East." During the last decade of Mendelsohn leading Meta, there has been a large number of Unit 8200 veterans employed across the company. Another person present at the dinner with Morgan and Mendelsohn was Catherine Jenkins. The singer has raised funds for the JNF, Israel's largest settler building body in occupied Palestine. Are we to believe that these two dinner companions did not seek to influence Morgan's coverage of Israel's genocide war in Gaza? It seems that Piers Morgan does have a horse in the race after all.
As always, we're joined by our resident expert, David Miller. David's an academic and a former professor at Bristol University. And he's now a non-resident senior research fellow at the Centre for Islam and Global Affairs at Istanbul's University. He's also a co-director of the lobbying watchdog Spinwatch, and he's a leading British scholarly critic of Israel. Our guest today is the independent journalist Warren Thornton. Warren is the journalist who broke the story about the Canadian Parliament giving a standing ovation to a Ukrainian Nazi who had served in the SS during World War II. Incredibly, he was arrested by the British police for revealing this information, but no charges were ever brought. In his previous life, Warren served in the military, after which he spent 8 years providing personal protection for aid workers in many war-torn countries. And he's now joining us via Skype. Welcome to the show. David, what's been your thoughts about Piers Morgan's coverage, really, of the situation in Gaza?
Well, as the film shows, I mean, he claims to be unbiased journalist without fear or favour, pursuing the questions that people will want answered. It's the rationale of all mainstream journalists. And of course, he does pursue a particular line with interviewees, but he doesn't do it on the other side. So, for example, when he had Loki, the rapper, on recently, and of course interrupted him all the time, and there's big arguments all the way through it. Whereas you compare and contrast that with people on the other side, supporters of Zionist
Douglas Murray, for example.
Genocide. I was thinking of Douglas Murray, where he's just given a platform to spout his Islamophobic and anti-Palestinian bile. So there's a clear contrast, and you see that in general with the mainstream media, where critics of Western power are always interrupted. It was always the case in the coverage of Northern Ireland, is the case in the coverage in relation to Iraq, is the case now. So you see it's a general pattern of the mainstream media, but in Morgan's case, it's much more vituperative, isn't it? It's not supposed to be a kind of BBC-style encounter. So he's clearly biased, and he clearly does attack people who are critical of Zionism and indeed of Western foreign policy more than he does the people on the other side.
No, indeed. Well, Warren, I mean, I wonder whether you've caught any of Piers Morgan's shows yourself and what your thoughts are on them, if you have.
Yes, absolutely. One of the ones that I caught was when he was interviewing Jackson Hinkle. And Jackson Hinkle was underneath was the banner Putin fanboy. So you would hardly call that a fair and balanced view. I also caught the interview he did with Owen Jones. And it's very much an attack from Piers Morgan. There's no balanced debate, or as a journalist, what you should be doing is asking questions, not shouting at people.
David, I wonder whether you might just sort of say a word or two about the Mendelsohn family that Morgan's close to. We've covered Mendelsohn on this show before, but just say a bit about the relationship with Morgan and Mendelsohn.
So, of course, I mean, Mendelssohn's connections with, for example, Murdoch, who we're going to maybe speak about later, and with the Israel lobby go back many, many years. He was one of the key lobbyists in the early Blair years, involved in the first Blair lobbying scandal. And of course, he's had a relationship with Morgan for some time. We have the photograph behind us, don't we, of John Mendelssohn's wife, Nicola, who's a very senior exec at Meta, which of course owns Facebook and WhatsApp and Instagram. There they are having the best sushi in town in New York in late October as the bombs were dropping over Gaza. And we saw people there not able to eat raw fish or, in fact, anything at all, because, of course, the Israelis have cut off all access and, of course, bombed the bakeries. So there we have these people. There are no similar photographs of him with Palestinians, with Muslims, with people of colour even. So he says, oh, I have friends who are Muslims and friends who are Jews. And you think, well, that's very interesting, Piers, but who are the people who you hang out with and whose views you might take seriously? Did they take the opportunity to try and influence the way he does stuff? Did he take the opportunity to try and influence the way that they do stuff to benefit him? I mean, she works at, as we said, at Meta, very senior, has been involved in the witch hunt, for example, against Jeremy Corbyn, the manufactured notion of anti-Semitism on the left and amongst Muslims. So this is all part of a wider problem, isn't it? That the political elite all sing from the same hymn sheet. They know each other. They go out to the best sushi restaurants in New York together. I don't think you've been there. I haven't either. And so what we see is this is their bubble. None of us have the possibility of being in their bubble. They're in a completely separate bubble, and of course they try and pretend, and he may even believe that they are there to properly discuss things, but the actual social relations that they're embedded in tell a different story.
No, he gets quite indignant actually when you challenge him about his lack of impartiality, but there we are. But Warren, as I said in the introduction there, I mean, you revealed the Ukrainian Nazi in the Canadian Parliament. I mean, what do you make of the news that a Spanish mercenary who entered Ukraine with the Azov battalion, the Nazi Azov battalion, is now fighting alongside the Israeli military in Gaza?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There is no question about this happening. Because this happens very, very often. There were many people, even Liz Truss called on people to go over to the Azov battalion, who are, you know, a very, very nasty group indeed. And mercs go, as you know, I know quite a few of them, and mercenaries go wherever the money is. So if Israel is paying the money, they will go there. And as the Ukrainian war is going very, very badly, and the Russians are targeting the foreign mercenary soldiers over there, it is very, very easy for them then to go, I've had enough of this, I'll go to Israel where the odds are a little bit more in my favour. And that's what mercenaries will do. I'm not being awful, Chris. Mercenaries kill people and they do it for money. So they are not what you would call the most moral people in the world. So not only are Spanish people going over there, I've got reports of Czech, British, American and also Colombian.
No, indeed. Interesting comment there, Warren, when you said not the most moral people. Rather ironic, given how Israel like to portray themselves as the most moral army, which it clearly isn't, as you know. But David, I mean, tell us about the Jewish National Fund that Morgan's friend Catherine Jenkins actually raises money for. I think we've also covered that on the show before, but just say a word or two now.
JNF is, of course, one of the four key elements of the Zionist movement. They have the JNF is there to get the land and make sure that non-Jews never in the future can own or properly access the land. There are other elements of the movement which raise the money, which bring people in to settle the land, to steal the land from the Palestinians.
Yes. And
so the JNF is core to the Zionist project. And so, and we've seen in this country, we've reported on this before, that the people at the head of the JNF in the UK, the branch of it in the UK, are you know, quite controversial because they make statements about Muslims which are regarded as being simply racist and Islamophobic. And even the Board of Deputies has called on them to pipe down a little bit,
wow.
which is saying something. And of course, the Board of Deputies is an organisation which has collaborated with Nicola Mendelsohn in doing work on the alleged epidemic of anti-Semitism, which there is in this country, at the same time as there's an actual genocide happening in Gaza, and we're supposed to turn our attention to this alleged a tidal wave of anti-Semitism. No.
Yeah, ridiculous. But Warren, I mean, what's your estimation of Israel's targeting of the Al-Shifa hospital?
Well, it's quite disgraceful, to be honest with you. I've run several stories myself, which clearly show that there is no Hamas underneath the hospital whatsoever. And international law is very clear about collective punishment. And when you target civilians in this way, you are committing war crimes. Now, it is not enough for you to suppose or think that somebody is doing something underneath the hospital, shell it and kill civilians, and then go in and look for evidence. You have to have the evidence beforehand. But of course, we've seen this before with WMDs, haven't we?
Yes. No, indeed. You're absolutely right. And we're just going around the same circuit again, it seems to me. But listen, Warren, we're just going to pause the discussion there for a moment, as I'd like to get your and David's thoughts on our next video report about TalkTV and its parent company, News Corp.
Your journalistic career.
The channel through which Piers Morgan broadcasts his pro-Israel show is TalkTV. The channel was founded by oligarch Rupert Murdoch and is owned by his News Corp empire. What is Rupert Murdoch's history with Israeli intelligence? He founded an Israeli subsidiary in 1988 in collaboration with the Israeli Weizmann Institute of Science. Eventually named NDS Group, it was alleged by the BBC in 2012 that the firm hacked Murdoch's TV rivals in order to gain an upper hand over them. But what was this Murdoch-owned Israeli company? NDS Group featured Rupert's sons, James and Lachlan, on the board and was led by CEO A. Peled, who was a technical officer in the Israeli occupation forces. The head of security at the Murdoch-owned NDS was Reuven Hazak, the former deputy director of Shin Bet, Israel's internal intelligence agency. The chief technical director was Yossi Surya, who was part of an Israeli settler group that attempted to bomb the Al-Aqsa compound. The News Corp Foundation, Murdoch's charitable arm, also funded the Jerusalem Foundation, which builds illegal settlements in the West Bank. Murdoch himself was also on the board of the oil and gas company Genie Energy at the time. It had contracts in the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights. Murdoch also relied on the lobbying skills of LLM Communications, founded by Jonathan Mendelsohn, who was simultaneously head of the Labour Friends of Israel. There is also the case of Sam Kiley, who resigned as Africa correspondent at the Murdoch-owned Times newspaper, blaming pro-Israel censorship. He also pointed out Murdoch's close friendship with Ariel Sharon and his investments in the Zionist entity. Israel lobbyist Icy Liebler wrote, "Murdoch, whom I met personally on a number of occasions, is himself unquestionably a genuine friend of Israel."
David, what do you make of this NDS group that Murdoch owns?
So Murdoch's not been heavily involved in the media industry in Israel. There's been various attempts to get him involved more, but the NDS group has been a key subsidiary of News Corp. And what's interesting about it, I mean, we must have named on this show hundreds and hundreds of former Israeli intelligence agents who've gone on to be involved in media and tech industries. And here's another example. And if the BBC report is to be believed, this was a company which was used by Murdoch to hack into the records of competitors. Now that's drawing on the skills of Unit 8200, which is the cyber signals intelligence agency of the Israeli military. And this is the function of all these companies which are set up, tech companies which are set up by people from Unit 8200. So it looks like he's using ex-Israeli intelligence people as effectively a private intelligence army.
Yeah.
Not surprising that happens, but that the Israelis do that. But here's Murdoch doing that as well. And of course, the reason he's doing it is because he is, as the film shows, very, very close to the Israelis. And he is himself a committed Zionist. Well, at the same time, of course, having made several what would be regarded as questionable statements about the Jews.
Indeed. Warren, what's your view on Rupert Murdoch's function in British society then?
It's pretty all-invasive and pretty terrible. It doesn't matter whether it's Israel or anything else. What you have as journalists, and I speak to journalists quite often on this, is and everybody will turn around and say this is not the case, but journalists who are afraid to speak out tell me this quite often. You are given what is going to be the narrative and you will follow it. And that doesn't matter whether you're Piers Morgan, Jordan Peterson, Ben Shapiro at the Daily Wire with Cape Technology, obviously with Israeli intelligence there. Murdoch has his fingers and his tentacles in every pie. When there was reporting on the McCann case and the poor missing child, Murdoch was absolutely heavily all over this. And he's all over Israel and he's all over the Ukrainian one as well. There is no doubt whatsoever, if you check out his son-in-law and you check out the family there, it just goes to show you how many pies and how many fingers he does have in. He is the oligarch that we all fear, I think, really.
Yes, no, indeed. What about this Jerusalem Foundation then, David, that Murdoch has been funding?
So the Jerusalem Foundation, as the name implies, is based in Jerusalem, and indeed is engaged in development activities in the municipality of Jerusalem, including most notably in East Jerusalem, occupied East Jerusalem beyond the Green Line. And of course it's engaged in ethnic cleansing in Sheikh Jarrah and various other places, in building new developments which will push Palestinians out and allow access henceforth on a discriminatory basis to Jews only, and so it's an ethnic cleansing operation. It of course has links with the Jewish National Front as well, and of course it has a UK branch. There are branches, of course, in the US and many other places, and they get huge amounts of funding from from places like the Murdoch Foundation, as well as by the family foundations of many rich Zionist families in the UK and the US and elsewhere. And it shows the way in which the money flows for ethnic cleansing in Palestine are coming not just from the Israeli state, but from the Zionist movement and Zionist affiliated individuals outside of Palestine. And that's another indication, really, of the need to target Zionism in the UK, in the US, instead of just the question of dismantling the Zionist regime in Palestine.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Warren, TalkTV and other Murdoch outlets, I mean, put themselves forward as patriotic news. What do you think of that?
Well, it's complete nonsense. I want to quickly take you through some of the patriotic news, if you could. Ben Shapiro at the Daily Wire and Jordan Peterson put them forward as patriotic news. That's Cape Technology. The CEO is a guy called Ido Erling, who's obviously Israeli intelligence. You have Rishi Sunak, Infosystems, or Levine. They're 8200. Google have 99 employees that are former 8200. You have Eni Palmer, the former director of the Israeli military intelligence, in charge of Meta, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp. Then you've got the Microsoft people as well. All the companies that are purporting to be very, should we say, nationalistic, are 99% of the time run by literally Israeli intelligence, have their fingers all over every pie on the internet. So when these companies start up to rival the BBC and everything else, they're nothing of the sort. They're nothing to do with patriotism whatsoever. They're to do with making sure, and patriotism, we have to also remember, is very, very close to ethnic cleansing. It's very, very easy to set from patriotism into ethnic cleansing, into just wanting a pure society of your own people. So it is one of those things where they just go in and muddy the waters.
Yeah, no, indeed. But David, Murdoch was on the board, wasn't he, of Genie Energy as it was extracting oil from Syria's Golan Heights. Just say a word or two about that, will you?
So people think of Murdoch as a media oligarch. Of course he is, but as most oligarchs have, he has many other interests, and some of these are direct financial and economic interests in the continuing of the illegal occupation of the Golan Heights, and of course of other parts too of Palestine. So this is an indication, isn't it, once again, of the importance of investments in the Zionist entity. We've seen, haven't we, on the internet, plans for what's going to happen to Gaza should they be able to force all the Palestinians out, the luxury hotels they're going to build on the beaches, etc. So this is a reminder that there is an economic rationale for some of the activities that the Zionist military are currently carrying out. Of course, their edge is being blunted by the determined resistance of the Palestinian resistance factions, which is, again, an underreported element of the story in this country.
No, indeed. Well, Warren, I mean, do you think this all explains the Zionist bias displayed on TalkTV, or do you think there's more to it?
Oh, no, there's much more to it. I mean, there is, without doubt for me, and without question, the investigations that we've done, showing some of the oil and everything else, and the amount of money that is going to be made from this once they can shift the Palestinians off of that land. You have to remember there are 3 countries that wanted to build a Eastern Med pipeline. They are Russia, they are China, and they are Iran. And as far as I'm concerned, America and its Zionist lobby and its obviously its military-industrial complex have tried to start wars with all 3 of these countries, and they won't stop until they get their way. Make no bones about it. This is not about some sort of October the 7th cleanse. This is about shifting Palestinians off that land. They want it. They know they've got to expand. They're committing a genocide, and they're committing it in the name of money, oil, and power. No,
indeed. Well, unfortunately, we are out of time again, so that's it for another show. I'd like to thank our guest, Warren Thornton, and of course our resident expert, Professor David Miller. Palestine Declassified will be back next week with more forensic investigations and analysis. But in the meantime, you can follow the show on Facebook, Twitter, and Telegram, where we post regular clips and updates. You can also help us to be a counterbalance to the likes of Piers Morgan by sharing today's programme on your social media platforms. So until next time, this is Chris Williamson saying bye for now.